Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here. I first want to thank Dr. Berkowitz and my friend and mentor, Ambassador Marian Glendon, for their leadership on this commission, for all the hard work that you have already done, and all the hard work that lays ahead of us collectively. You'll get the chance to hear from each of them in a moment. I'm also incredibly grateful to the members of the commission for taking on this important task, for examining what unalienable rights really are and what they mean for us today. I'm exceedingly thankful, too, to the members of the public who have joined us here today. The health of a democracy depends on the care and concern of the people. You're taking this seriously, and we appreciate that. It is in the finest traditions of American democracy that this meeting is a public one. One thing that makes America special is that our civic deliberations do, in fact, take place in the open. We're not governed by the private writ of kings. We always have the debate. Think of Lincoln Douglas, President Wilson's 14 points, the Civil Rights Movement, and, of course, many other issues in America's history. It heartens me that you all are here to consider the ideas and arguments that will be made before you. I pray that they will improve our understanding and profit our nation. This meeting of the Commission extends America's unmatched national commitment to fundamental human rights. It began with the words of the Declaration of Independence, which made clear governments must honor, quote, unalienable rights, end of quote. It continued when Abraham Lincoln, inspired by the words of the Declaration, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Then in 1947, Eleanor Roosevelt led the creation of the UN Declaration of Universal Human Rights, a document that substantially drew on America's constitutional Bill of Rights. We upheld fundamental rights in the Civil Rights era when the promise of liberty and equality was realized for Americans who had previously been treated as second-class citizens or worse. And we upheld human rights internationally in the fight against apartheid and against communism. But in the last few decades, we've become confused about rights. Claims of rights have shaped our political debates, but it isn't always clear whether we're talking about fundamental, universal rights or debatable political priorities or merely personal preferences. Claims of rights have exploded. One research group has found that between the United Nations and the Council of Europe, there are combined 64 human rights-related agreements encompassing 1,377 provisions. International bodies designated to protect human rights have drifted from their missions or have been outright corrupted. Authoritarian governments often misuse these bodies. Just last week, China and Russia, for instance, voted Venezuela onto the UN Human Rights Council. This is enormous hypocrisy. It's dangerous. Today, too often, our kids aren't taught about the role of unalienable rights in the American founding, if they're taught the founding at all. I think it is indeed time to ask some key questions. What are our fundamental freedoms? Why do we have them? Who or what grants them? How do we know if a claim of human rights is true? What happens when rights conflict? Should certain categories of rights be inextricably linked to other rights? How should government be organized and limited to ensure the protection of those rights? These are the types of questions that the commission that sits before you will explore. Now, I fully expect that the commission's distinguished members will produce worthy answers to each of these questions. And I want to be clear that the commission is an advisory body, that its focus is on principle, not policy formulation, although we hope that it will inform policy. Its mission isn't to discover new principles, but to ground our discussion of human rights in America's founding principles. I would also note that its work is nonpartisan. There are registered Republicans, Democrats, and independents serving on the commission. That composition reflects a consensus across American politics that fundamental human rights, human dignity, must be protected. It's why the State Department has put out a human rights report every year since 1977. It's why we have an entire bureau dedicated to fighting human trafficking. It's why both left and right are sounding the alarm on China's abuse and detainment of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang region of China. I'm confident. I'm confident that the Commission will be a vital new voice in American chorus of freedom. We hope it will prompt a serious debate about human rights that extends across party lines and across national borders. And we trust. We trust that it will extend America's legacy as a nation without peer in upholding freedom and human dignity all across the world. Thank you, good luck, and thank you all for being with us here today.